Cinder de la Doom summons the Shadow Fiends. Chapter 5. Cinder de la Doom lay on her back with her head propped on pillows, her eyes never straying far from the window. She could see the tree in the backyard whipping in the wind, and its branches cast long, finger-like shadows which looked as though they were trying to rip the posters of pale-faced rock stars from her walls. Flashes of lightning lit up her room in such rapid succession that the doll parts dangling from the ceiling appeared jerky and robotic as they swayed in the strobe-like light. Then the darkness would rush back in, obscuring the coffin-shaped bookshelf and devouring the gargoyle figurines glaring down from her shelving. Overhead, something tapped on the roof. The sounds were faint and lacked any discernible pattern or rhythm, but they were insistent. Every few seconds, a new volley pecked across her ceiling, seeming to scamper from one side to the other. The girl tried to tell herself that it was only drops of rain. There was a storm brewing out there after all. Yet her imagination insisted that the sounds were actually claws clacking against the shingles as some dark and malevolent creature scampered over the eaves, desperately searching for a way into the house. The attic. The De La Doom residence was a stately Victorian which overlooked the town of Gobbler's Knob from a knoll. Like a lot of older houses, there was one window in the attic which was more like a vent. Rows of wooden slats lined the frame, and the handyman had nailed a sheet of plywood on the inside to keep heat from escaping in the winter. But how hard would it be for those slats to be ripped away? How long would it take a creature to gnaw through the thin plywood? Cinder pulled the duvet up even further as thunder rumbled so loudly that her window panes rattled in their sills. Or maybe the creature had dropped from the roof. Maybe it had slinked across the yard and was even now just out of sight, its ghastly hand rising under the cover of darkness, using the thunder to mask the sound of its fingers trying to force open the sash. With the next flash of lightning would she see some grotesque and monstrous face leering from the other side of the window, its breath fogging the thin pane? Just the thunder, she whispered to herself. It's just thunder, nothing else, nothing there, nothing at all. Cinder had hoped, as she had in the crypt, that the sound of her own voice would calm the tremors passing through her small body. But her words were weak and ineffectual, more like a plea than a statement of fact should meant them to be. Instead of bolstering her courage, the whisper only made her feel that much smaller, and her eyes warmed as tears welled within them. How could she have been so stupid? Her first rule had always been never trust strange spirits. And yet she had allowed Wilhelmina Blackthorn to lure her into a sense of friendship. Staying up all night with her Ouija board lunchbox had been what she'd always imagined a slumber party would be like. The camaraderie of girls sharing secrets with one another, whispering and giggling by candlelight. She had felt a sense of kinship with the dead witch, as if they shared a bond that even time could not constrain. But her trust had been betrayed, and now she was paying the price. Through the walls, Cinder heard her little brother moan. The 4-year-old was prone to nightmares, and the muffled voice was probably just that. It was nothing more than a bad dream spilling over into the waking world. But what if it wasn't? What if something were crouched on his chest with cold eyes glistening in the glow of his nightlight? What if a fang-lined mouth loomed so closely to the boy's lips that wisps of life were sucked directly from his lungs? The house creaked and popped while the wind moaned outside, and Cinder tried to listen past these sounds. She tried to hear Jimmy knock action figures onto the floor as he flailed his arms. She strained to hear the slightest creak of bed springs, but there was nothing. not even her father snores. Why wasn't he snoring? He always snored, night after night, without fail. Because he's dead, because they're all dead, and it's your fault, and you're going to be dead next because it's coming for you, it's in the house, it's in the hall, it's just outside the door. Cinder's breath came in short, rapid pants, and the room swooned around her, almost as though her bed were spiraling into a vortex to hell. Her hands and feet tingled, and her bottom lip quivered as hot tears streamed from the corners of her eyes. No one's dead, and there's nothing there. The young girl forced herself to inhale slowly, pulling sandalwood-scented air through nostrils that threatened to clog with snot. Stop being such a baby. After all, what had she actually seen in the mirror's reflection? Nothing. There was thunder, lightning, and the wind howling through the trees as dogs brayed in the distance. True, it seemed like all of these things had started at the exact moment her match transferred its fire to the candle's wick. But that could have just been coincidence. Or, even more likely, those things had been present all along. Perhaps she'd only noticed them once her fear had peaked. The more Cinder thought about it, the easier her breathing became. The tears dried on her cheeks, and the constant prattle of panic in the back of her mind eased into slow and logical thought. Her entire body felt as though it sighed, and she was able to watch a bolt of lightning crack the sky without inwardly cringing. Slipping out of bed, Cinder tiptoed to her window, instinctively sidestepping the floorboards known to squeak. She'd close the curtains, trade her ruined dress for pajamas, and snuggle within the blankets until sleep took her. Tomorrow morning she'd go back to the crypt to get her lunchbox, and of course the other things she'd left behind. But, she decided with a nod, she'd never talk to Wilhelmina again. This little scare was reminder enough that she shouldn't be making friends with spirits she summoned. She would not be that careless again, no matter how lonely she got. With her hands grasping the lacy black curtains, Cinder looked across the yard before pulling them closed. Her eyes skimmed over the silhouetted cherry trees dotting the hillside, past the wrought iron fence surrounding their property. She watched the wind bounce an aluminum can along the length of Doe Lane, while shop awnings fluttered on either side of Buckeye Street. Buckeye was almost perfectly centered in her window, and her gaze followed it naturally. But then the young girl gasped as her grip on the curtains tightened to the point that the rod sagged with its force. Pinpoints of sweat beaded her hairline, and she forgot to breathe. For halfway down the tar and chip surface of Buckeye, a horde had gathered. They crowded the center of the street, as motionless as the parking meters on either side. Though she could see no eyes, Cinder felt their collective stare burn into her soul. They're real. The outside world lit up with the latest flash of lightning, and they disappeared in the electric blue glow. At the same time, Deputy Henrich's patrol car zipped along Doe Lane, set on a collision course with the bouncing can. To Cinder's frozen mind, each of these things were equally important. Part of her knew that one was just a minor detail in the scene playing out, and that the other was of monumental significance. Yet her thought processes could go no further than that. It was as if they slammed into some invisible wall and shattered into 1,000 splintered pieces. As the lightning faded, Cinder watched them form. Nothing more than fuzzy patches of darkness when true traces of lightning still lingered in the air, but gaining solidity as the darkness they pulled themselves from grew deeper. The clap of thunder may have would very well have been their orders to move, for they surged forward as a single unit, cycling through forms so fluidly that the young girl's mind teetered on the chasm of madness as it tried to impose order upon chaos. She felt a scream trapped somewhere deep inside, an ear-piercing well that tightened her chest with anticipated force. But as strong as it was, it still couldn't break free. The Shadow Fiends were heading straight for the De La Doom residence, and Deputy Henrik was heading straight toward them. Yet all the young girl could do was watch. So Cinder now knows that she really has unleashed something, and she now knows for certain that it is indeed coming for her. Perhaps Deputy Hendricks and his patrol car will be able to intercede. Perhaps he will be the hero of the story and save poor little Cinder from these evil fiends. Or perhaps not. We will find out what happens tomorrow in the next chapter of Cinder de la Doom Summons the Shadow Fiends. Good night.